Hi there and welcome. So I'm just going to start to dive right in. I know we're waiting for a number of people who signed up, which is very exciting because we have a lot to go through. I'm just going to get started and give you a list of some of the things that I wanted to talk about. And then I've gotten a number of email questions and just questions from the website and stuff. What I thought we would talk about today is why a child can't sit still. Also, how we go about structuring our day if we're home educating, and why writing is important and how to teach it. Let me check some of my levels here. Oh, that looks good. Okay. And then I was going to give you guys a couple of ideas for videos because kids can learn a lot from watching. I particularly enjoy documentaries. You have to be a little bit careful because sometimes they might be a little adult for your child or something like that. So sometimes you have to be a little bit careful, discerning, let's say, but they can also be very helpful. So I think what we're going to start with is I'm going to open up the chat room, and anybody who would like to ask a question, if you'll let me know your name, then I will call on you, and then you can unmute and ask the question, and that way we can open it up to participation a little bit. So to get started, why can't children sit still? And the first answer that I have for that is, why should they? Just because you said so, or because the school system said so, or because some person over in Prussia decided that in order to raise a good military, you had to make them obey. And the first lesson in obedience is making somebody sit still when they're little and they just want to run around and explore the world. So parents who are struggling with the fact that their child can't sit still, I would say indulge the child. That's my offset, just because our system is so geared into oppressing the children into the mold that we have decided they should fill. That's my initial. Now, I know that might be shocking to some of you. And yeah, for certain things, children ought to learn to sit still. So there could be any number of reasons why a child isn't sitting still, but for most children, they're curious and they want to move around because they're exploring the world through their bodies, through their hands and their feet. And so the reason that your child isn't sitting still is because they haven't been trained to sit still. So I'll tell a quick story. When we were new parents, my husband and I went out to dinner with our toddler, and he was a terror, and he ran all over the place, and he wouldn't sit at the dinner table. And I mean, it was just basically it was a disaster. Because we were constantly having to get up and get him and bring him back and that kind of thing. And on the way home, Kevin said, "Well, I guess that's the last time we eat out for a while." And I laughed and I said, "Oh no, we're going out to dinner tomorrow night." And it doesn't matter where you go. I mean, why does McDonald's have the great big jungle gym climbing thing for kids? Is because they need to move, and it's good for them to move around. But at the same time, when the food's there, you want your child to sit still so that they eat, because you want your kid to be eating properly, right? So there's a balance to maintain. But what happens is if you gently enforce the "you must sit still" at the restaurant, eventually the child learns, oh, it's only for a limited amount of time. It's because first we sit down and then we order and then we wait for the food and then we get the food and then maybe then I can get up and run around or something like that. And so what I would do with my kids is I would pick the times when they could get up and run around and then choose the times that they had to sit still. So if you're struggling with a child who won't sit still, then you need to find that sort of happy medium where you're not demanding too much of them in terms of sitting still, but you're getting enough of what you need to get when they do sit still that you come to a good compromise in a sense. And through that, they will eventually learn that the whole sitting still thing is not the children know nothing. And you have to approach it that way. So when you say sit still, they think that's the end of the world. No more running, no more moving around. You have to sit still for forever, because that's all they think in. They're not aware of time. So everything to them is basically forever. So if you can get across to them, I mean, especially at the very young ages, if you can get across to them, oh no, it's just for this amount of time, then eventually you'll have this exchange, this interaction, and the children will learn. Quite frankly. Okay. Next, how we structure our day as homeschoolers. Now, we run the whole gamut as home educators of how we like structure. In fact, I've recently been delving into the unschooling approach, which is, I think it's a little bit of crazy, but at the same time, they do make such great arguments. So unschooling is no structure, except limitations on what the children might have access to during the day. And I mean, I heard one unschooler say, yeah, if they get bored, then it's up to them to find something that interests them, but it's not going to be games, because games are only allowed on weekends or something like that, right? And so we might make a suggestion like, well, have you thought about black holes? Do you want to do some research on black holes? We can go to the library and get you some books for that. That kind of exchange that happens. So for homeschoolers, you have a set idea of what you think you need to accomplish. Part of that comes from the school system, and I'm not convinced. In fact, I'm convinced that the school system has a lot of things wrong. So I don't know if you want to adhere to the school system's guidelines on structuring a day. If you study Maria Montessori and the Montessori method, she was a doctor who, because she was female, they didn't know what to do with her, basically. So they assigned her to go watch children. And the children were left alone all day because the parents had to go work. And so she just went and observed the children. And what she realized is that they are self-taught. They were out exploring things and doing things by themselves, basically with no supervision. And so she watched them for a while, and she came to the conclusion that these kids would start their day basically with something easy, an easy task, like doing a puzzle that they had done before. And they would do the puzzle, and then they might take a break and go get some water and just sort of wander around a little bit. And then they would start to attack something that was much more challenging. And she broke it down to a paradigm where, for instance, they'd start the day at 9. They'd do something easy, an easy task. And at 10 o'clock approximately, they'd stop for a coffee break, sort of like we do on our day. 10 a.m. You kind of, well, I need to get a cup of coffee anyway. Let me just get up and get the wiggles out of me or whatever. And then they would go back to a task that was much more challenging, and they'd have basically 2 hours to do that task. So she advocated for a 3-hour window of time during which the children pursued their interests uninterrupted. That's the Montessori method. When you see Montessori schools in the United States, because the different states have different guidelines and requirements of schools, you'll see that whole paradigm disrupted by nap time or organized snack time or organized circle time, reading, the teacher reads a book to the kids in preschool or in kindergarten. When you impose a schedule on the child, it's limiting to the child, because if the child knows that at 10 o'clock the bell rings and I don't have time to do math anymore, I'm going to have to switch over to social studies, the child won't attack the challenging problem that might take longer than the hour. Because when you attack a challenge, it's frustrating if you don't finish it. In fact, it's discouraging. So I would be somewhat careful about how you implement a structure. That said, I love structure. So I did structure. The way that I did it, we started at 9 o'clock every morning at the kitchen table, and we did devotion, Latin, which I led. So it was as long as it took us to get through it. It wasn't like, whoa, it's 9:25, time to get moving on something else. No, it was as long as we took to do it. Then after that, we did grammar. Grammar was simply as long as it took for us to get through it. If one child finished his grammar before the others were done with theirs, or basically whenever he was finished, I said, okay, now you go and you do your math. And math took as long as it took. And so in terms of structure, I would very strongly advocate for, yes, you have a list of things that you want to get done during the day, but you don't apply necessarily a schedule to them. Now, for my oldest child, because I believe highly in incentives, he would get his day done before if he completed his day. So he would have a list of tasks when he was younger. If he completed everything for his schooling before 1 p.m., he won half an hour on his game. That was my way of incentivizing him. Don't you know, he finished by 11:30 most days. In fact, he would get up extra early to be sure that he finished before 1 o'clock because he really wanted that incentive. He's very incentive driven. My second child is much less so. So you have to feel your kids out and see. But that would be my recommendation for structure. Okay, last, writing. Why do we teach writing? It's very simple. Writing is the equivalent of thinking. It just is. It's the equivalent of thinking. So I know that a lot of you struggle with writing because you consider yourselves poor writers, but that doesn't mean that you're poor readers. And all it takes to critique an essay is to read it. By the way, Ben Carson's mother couldn't read, but he was still doing essays every week for books that he got out of the library for her, that he turned into her as a supplemental instruction that she implemented because she didn't think that the schools were getting enough of the job done. So there are a lot of different ways to teach writing. I highly recommend, there's a writing program called Lost Tools of Writing. It's for older kids. It's for seventh grade basically and up, but you can start it earlier than that. But it teaches writing in an amazing way because it teaches you to come up with the ideas to write about, which is of course the biggest problem with writing is writer's block. I don't know what to write about. Oh, I don't want to write a book report or a history paper. So if you want to look that up, you can look that up, called Lost Tools of Writing. There's some other writing programs, creative writing programs that I know other people have found highly effective. The best way to learn how to write is to write. And I'll be honest, I write professionally now. I didn't learn how to write until I was 15 years out of college. In fact, I remember going to college. I learned how to write an essay finally in college because there was another college student who I knew who accidentally read one of my essays that I got a failing grade on. And he said, "You call this an essay?" And I'm like, well, you show me how to do it then. Like, I issued a challenge and he did. He showed me how to write an essay. That still didn't, I did much better on my next essay. In fact, the teacher was like, okay, I got my eyes on you because you're cheating. Because my second, and I wrote it, it was so much better than the first one. And I did much better after that because there is a standard for the essay. There is a standard outline, which is taught in Lost Tools of Writing. Also, Shirley Grammer goes into it as well. That's my grammar program that I highly recommend. These people really should sponsor me, but I haven't done that yet. They also teach actually, I didn't go farther than Shirley 7, so I don't know if they really go more in depth in their writing program. They very well may. But they teach the rudimentaries of writing an essay to the younger kids. And then a quick disclaimer for those of you who implement Shirley Grammer. Let's see, how do I put this? When I did Shirley Grammer for my first child, we started in his third grade year and he did everything that the book said, because I was just getting out of the school paradigm and I was paranoid that I was going to blow it, that I was going to fail at home education, and he was going to be a messed up kid for the rest of his life. I was just going to blow the whole deal. And so he did every single assignment, top to bottom. I didn't miss a single lesson. Now, a year and a half later, I put him back in school, and they also did Shirley grammar, and she did every fifth item on their list and none of the writing, because she just picked and chose the pieces that she was going to use for the kids. We left the school eventually. After about 6 weeks, we left the school for other reasons. But in hindsight, what I realized is textbooks tend to be overwritten so that the teachers can pick and choose, so that the teachers can determine, so that they're more one size fits all. And the teacher determines, well, this really isn't that necessary, or this is more necessary. And they kind of piece together the whole thing from the textbook. So if you're going to pursue Shirley, I would say you don't have to have your child do every single writing lesson unless your kid absolutely loves writing and loves the challenge of it. I would say that you can lay back a little bit. And certainly if you're getting lots of tears and lots of drama with writing the essays, I would totally lay off. There's no reason to teach your child to hate writing. And that's what you end up doing if they really struggle with the writing portion or the grammar part, whichever portion of whatever curriculum. If they're really, really struggling, we want learning to be fun. We want it to be enjoyable, because naturally, the natural tendency is that learning is enjoyable. So why would we fight against that and try and sort of muck it up for people, for young people? I know that by the time I graduated high school, I hated learning. It was the worst thing ever, which is absurd because I love learning now. I'm fascinated by everything. So why would we have a system that teaches us to hate learning? That's a whole different discussion I'm not going to get into. All right, before I get to your questions, I'm going to tell you at the end of this, I'll give you some good videos to learn from, or, learning videos that you can give your kids. And I want to talk to you quickly if you're interested. I put this out. This is let's see if I can show it well enough. This is an invitation to you and your spouse. My husband and I last year did a devotional. You can see it's dated 2020. It came out last year. It's absolutely for free. It's just a short devotional to support marriage, because we support marriage. We love marriage. We love being married. We just celebrated our 23rd wedding anniversary. And so I'm going to circulate this in an email to you guys because there's a link and there's a QR code, but I've got to get this out to you in case you're interested, because Valentine's Day is coming. And so I just thought it's absolutely free. I just thought I would share that because I'm going to have to retire it this year anyway. And I haven't done a new one. So there you go. Feel free to share it with your friends. Just my gift to you. Also, my new book is coming out. It's called Words for Warriors. I'm very excited about it. Oh, that's my name down there. I covered that up. Words for Warriors. So that'll be included in the email. And if you're curious, of course, the devotional is Teach from Love. Teach from Love. It's a school year devotional for kids. It teaches godly virtue to our children, which is something that we are not teaching in our schools, sadly. So if you know any teachers who are still in the school system, feel free to pick them up a copy and give it to them. It's certainly appropriate to go through in the classroom because it's not all just Bible. It's some nice little stories about real life. And it engages children in the discussion about why we want to be good people. If your children are learning that they are accidents of nature and that evolution is really the only truth out there, then they have no reason to be good people because evolution tells us survival of the fittest. So, and then finally, my book, which started this whole thing, is They're Your Kids. They're Your Kids. It documents a little bit my journey, how I approached home education, the struggles that I had and how I overcame them, and some of the triumphs that I had along the way as well, to hopefully inspire you on your journey. So I did that. by the way, if you get a chance to subscribe, it would be clever. I don't know how long the emails are going to, or the Facebook is going to be operational. So I'm not sure how else to reach you guys. You guys you're on a list now because you signed up for this seminar, or this session, I should say. But if you have friends who you think might be interested, maybe shoot their emails over. So Teresa, let's start with you. You said you have a question.
Hi, how are you?
Excellent. Thank you.
I have 3 or 4 things I want to talk about, and I'll do them quickly.
You emailed.
Yes, I did. Did you get it?
Yes, I did get your email. Go ahead.
Okay. So I try to have 1 to 2 hours with my 5-year-old granddaughter on Monday through Friday for her homeschooling. Some days she isn't as focused, so I do try to get in 1 hour. What do you recommend during these times, like coloring, painting, educational videos, something simple?
Yes, baking cookies.
Yes, we do that.
Frosting cookies.
Yes.
And if you're getting an hour a day, fantastic.
Yes.
Like, why should you want more? I mean, sure, we want our kids to be well behaved because, they should be seen and not heard, right? No,
no,
we want her to
no,
be.
she is both.
Right. We want them to be engaged. So if she's really antsy, she should go outside and find as many different kinds of leaves as she can to bring back to you.
And then she loves outside.
And then engage in pressing the leaves. If you have big books, you can actually put, I used to put saran wrap so that the leaves wouldn't discolor the pages of the book.
Right.
So you put saran wrap on one book, you put saran wrap over the leaf, and then you put a heavy book on top, or a stack of heavy books.
Yes.
But find nature projects to do with her. And in fact, they say that being outside in nature is actually it's not the cure, but it helps kids with ADD. For some reason.
We did pick flowers, and I took the wax paper and we pressed those together and then put it in an acrylic frame at my house. So we do go outside. So thank you for enforcing that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That would be my number one. And I just wouldn't put too much stock in, exactly how much time she's been sitting still.
Oh.
In fact, I said that I was going to talk about this, but then I got your email and I'm like, oh, I have to talk about this. She's 5 years old.
Yes.
She's 5. And by the way, so you have a couple other questions?
On the days that she is focused and wants to do more, do I continue pushing her a little with that, or do something she hasn't done?
Oh, no. If she's showing interest, I would totally expose her to things that she hasn't done.
Okay.
Because she'll love the thing, right? She should. If she's, you don't want to bore her.
Right.
So if she's showing interest, find new things for her. I remember I was getting bored in my class, and my mother told me, go and ask your teacher to teach you something that you don't know yet. And I did. And he taught me fractions.
Wow.
So then I leapt ahead of the class. So it was later that year. But that's a whole long story. I won't go into that. But my point is, if the child is showing interest, challenge them with things that they don't know. Absolutely.
Okay. And her parents do that also. So we're all on the same page.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. I live in Alabama and she's in Georgia. So we alternate between the places. So academically, I want to feel that I'm preparing her for her next year, because she is pre-K and I want her to be prepared for kindergarten. So I guess, is there any kind of list or something that you have used in the past that would help me feel better that I am doing, or we are doing, the right thing?
Well, okay. There are books out there that are what every kindergartner should know, what every first grader needs to know, what every second grader needs to know. It's a series of books.
Okay.
But I don't advocate for you putting your granddaughter up on a metric compared to other children, especially with what I'm learning more recently, even about how we learn and when we learn. Right. And the reason for that is kids so mathematics is a, um, give me a second. It's not concrete. A lot of math is not concrete. So when you're teaching children the abstract, thank you, that's the word I'm looking for. When you're teaching children abstract things, some kids' brains won't, they just don't have the facility yet to comprehend abstract things.
Right.
Other kids get abstract things when they're 3 years old. Okay. But some kids don't. And so if you expose the kids to the abstract things and they don't understand, then they somehow get labeled with this, oh, I'm no good at math.
Yeah,
And that
they do.
it breaks my heart because
Mine
it's
too.
absurd. Okay. Math is a foreign language. It's just a different language.
Yes.
So we just say, okay, well, I can't learn Greek because I don't know any Greek. That's ridiculous. If you want to know Greek, you start to learn Greek. It's that simple. If you want to know math, you start to learn math. But maybe you were exposed too young, and so you gave up. There are certain things that we're not ready to learn. For instance, sex. We don't teach our well, people who raise their children in their homes don't teach their kids about sex in kindergarten or second grade. The schools do. I don't know why. It's completely inappropriate.
Yes.
But that's where they've gone now. And actually, I do know why, but I won't get into that. But my point is, there are certain things that are age appropriate. And by age appropriate, I don't mean the number. I mean the developmental increments. Okay. So I know that you want reassurance, but your reassurance ought to be found in, is she engaged? Is she interested? Is she behaved in the manner that you feel is right for her? Rather than, is she just like all the other kids? And trust me, if you go off of the first parameters that I put out, she will be far advanced of the other kids. And then if you put her into kindergarten, she will be bored out of her wits.
Look right here.
Oh, what happened? Oh, hello there.
Say hello. Hello. That's her. That's my sweet granddaughter.
She's adorable.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate everything you're saying. I do feel like we're doing a lot of what you've talked about in the beginning of this session and the questions that you've answered for me. Let's see if there's anything else. I guess that's really all that I have, the questions I have. I do want to tell you again, thank you. I've enjoyed this session. So I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do this one today, but I'm so glad I got to do it with you.
Oh, good. I'm so glad, Teresa. And yeah, we are very busy jumping through the hoops that we were raised with on behalf of our children.
Yes.
And that is not a winning proposition.
No.
So, but it's hard because it's when you're a fish in water, it is very hard to picture what it's like to breathe air. And so you've embarked on this journey. I'm very hopeful that she won't be going to school for kindergarten. What you'll find is the longer that you're not in the school, the easier it becomes to envision just doing it yourself. It's just not that hard. It just isn't. It's just not that challenging. Unless you have.
Be a lot harder. I thought it was going to be a lot harder than it is.
Right. But the reason that you think that it's hard is because they've taught you that it's hard. They had you in your chair for 12 years, K through 12, 13 years, telling you how hard it was.
Yes.
And that's a burden. That's a burden that was laid on all of us because in learning how hard it is, we learned how impossible it is even to teach ourselves. But the truth is so obviously the opposite of that because of everything that we've learned that we weren't taught in school, right?
Yes. Right.
That we didn't even know we were learning. We just had fun learning it. You learned how to work your iPhone. Maybe you got somebody to help you a little bit learn how to work the Android, whatever it is, right? You learned how to work a computer. And
Yes.
it was kind of fun to learn how to work a computer. And then you got excited because you figured out how to do stuff on the computer that nobody taught you how to do.
Yes.
That's the joy of learning. That's what we want to impart to our children so they can learn anything that they wanted. That's what takes the shackles off of them. And so the opposite is what puts shackles on people. And you and I are still shackled to the old system because we're still trying to figure out, how do we please the slave masters
Yes.
that we were busy trained to please in school? And that's why we homeschool. Thank you
Right.
so much for your question.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thank you for the happy anniversary. I love that. The school systems for my state require 3.5 hours a day for my 5-year-old. Yeah. Okay. Gym class counts for an hour. They don't ask you to delineate. This is Diane. And Diane, if you want to unmute, feel free. I don't see you though. I think I'm looking at a blank screen. If the school system requires 3.5 hours, I believe, well, I don't know, but my guess is they're only asking you to certify that you spent 3.5 hours. Well, cooking class is a class. Gym class is a class. Going to the bank class is a class. Learning how to talk to the banker person is a lesson. You if you're spending 3.5 hours with a kindergartner, because that's 5 years old, or a pre-K, if you're spending 3.5 hours a day with her, she is learning for those 3.5 hours. So sure, 45 minutes of reading, because that's just good. That just makes good sense. 45 minutes of reading, learning how to brush your teeth at night. That's school. It's all school, because the moment that they're learning their school, and I use that word I don't like the word school because I think it has such a negative connotation for me, frankly, because we've been schooled and that's not a good thing. So yeah, as long as they're just asking you to sign off that, and by the way, I'd love to know what state that is. Here's one from Heather. My kidlet is 3.5, so we're just getting started. Oh, I thought that was an answer to the 3.5 hours. Sorry. So I guess that's my 3.5 hours recommendation. If they're asking you to sort of delineate, then you just say an hour of reading, an hour of math facts, an hour of gym class. I don't know what you can do for 3.5 hours every day for 5-year-old. Okay, an hour of creative, artistic painting. You know what I mean? And I mean, my 5-year-old, my gosh, we used to set up the finger paints. They loved the finger paints. And then I would leave them outside and go in and make lunch. And by the time I got back outside, my daughter had stripped down and was blue all over her body. I love that. I miss that. She will hate me for saying that, I'm sure. She's quite the artist today, but she started with body painting, and that's a valid artistic endeavor. Okay. Frenicia? Frenicia.
Renisha?
Frenicia. My bad. Sorry.
Oh, no,
Hello.
it's fine. Hi. Well, thank you again for doing this, and especially for free. Doesn't have to be. Thank you. My question is, well, I have 9 children from I know from infant to 17. We love homeschooling and love like learning, and it's just refreshing what you're saying about like some people here if they're brand new to say that they can learn just by you talking to cooking or whatever it is, that it works, like I remember hearing that before and I just thought it was crazy, but I saw what their older children could do. Like they were homeschooled, and I'm sorry, I don't want to, there's such a long story, but it's very encouraging. But my question is about math. So we have a very relaxed style of homeschooling, but they're also really self-motivated, advanced. And one of my children, he's 13, he's only in junior high, and he's on high school level math on his own, just because he wants to get to a service academy. And my question about math is, what do you do? And if you have any recommendations of staying away from electronic forms of learning math. Like I love math. Like I got the calculus award when I was in high school. My husband, just like we absolutely love it, but we stay clear from electronics for the most part, but we use it as tools. And at the same time, we've diverted from physical books for math, just because we just wanted what works for our children. But most of them are online for their math classes. So what you recommend or have to say about that?
Okay, so he's 13. I personally don't like online. I just don't like it. I think pen and paper, or pencil, I should say pencil and paper and books. There's something about that tangible thing, and using paper, especially if you're talking about graphing and working through problems. I've never done math online, so I can't, it's hard for me to comment on that. I suppose if you're doing if the problem's online, but you're still doing pencil to paper to calculate it, then that's okay. But I really like the tangibility of being able to turn back in the book and review the solutions that the book has given for their practice problems, say. I like that interaction. That's just me, and it's probably just a vestige of how I learned to love math. But there's some great, Khan Academy has done some really has made great strides in teaching math and stuff. So I suppose it just depends on, your kid and what seems to work the best for him. And so if you wanted to try that, or if that's the way that it's sort of gone, why knock it if it's working? It sounds like it's working. And God bless you. We're going to need more mathematicians. I would just be leery because Common Core has really infected our teaching. So I personally advocate for getting old books for schooling. I just stick with the old stuff. Math has not changed. So why they needed to revamp it with Common Core is beyond me. They certainly haven't improved the way they teach math, which is, of course, the promise that was made in order to get everybody to sign up for Common Core. If anything, our math scores for children have gone down, which sadly I'm a little paranoid about, because math is logic. Math is the foreign language of logic. The mathematical expressions are expressions of truth, and that is another way that we learn to think. And so to dissuade young people from pursuing math by either making it too difficult or too confusing, or teaching it in a way that the parents won't be able to help the children because it's a new way of doing it, is actually abuse. Because when you're dissuading somebody from logic, from learning the language of logic, you're dissuading them from learning to think. And I find that just outrageous. So, but other than that, I don't have an opinion. I'm sorry. Okay. Phoenicia. Okay. So, let's see. Your state public education department should have a list of standards for each grade online. That's true. And what they require. New Mexico does. Yeah, some states actually require certain things. Some states actually have tests that you have to take, that your children have to take. Other states don't. So I just came from California. California has no testing. I'm in Florida. Florida has testing, but I'm new here, so I still have to get that figured out. Somebody here wrote that she likes Horizons. They have a 3-year-old program called Horizons for Threes. As long as it's fairly loose, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I caution you guys, try not to just be jumping through hoops so that you can pat yourself on the back about the teaching of the child. When my kids, I had one child who refused to potty train, just wouldn't. And 3 years old, still working a diaper, and well, maybe not 3, but we just refused to, just was very happy with the diaper. And I just said to myself, well, by the time this child is 16, potty training will be accomplished. You just have to, take your foot off the accelerator and coast for a little bit. And I think that if you allow your children some freedom, you'll find them begging you to teach them more. If you try to impose standards on your children, you'll find them backing up and saying, whoa, no, it's too much. Does that make sense? Like, it's a little too much. They don't need the pressure. And frankly, neither do you. You don't need it. Will the new administration, okay, so, this looks like it's a direct message, asking if homeschoolers will be forced back into the shadows again. You know, I don't know. I'm not sure how to answer that. I don't think so, because I don't think that there are shadows. I think that they will try that the school unions, the teachers unions, and others will try to impose restrictions to make it more difficult to home educate. But you know, that remains to be seen. I don't know sort of what the use is in trying to forecast that, unless you want to go and get a bunch of curriculum before it sells, before they limit. But I don't see that happening really. Let's see. Classical music or just music too for the little ones? Well, I highly recommend classical music. It is more complicated and it engages the brain in different, and it's been proven to engage the brain in different ways than your typical top 40s. That said, there are some really good top 40s pieces of music or whatever. So not that they should never listen to popular music, but I'd be careful because the lyrics sometimes are not great. I personally can't listen to music when I work. I'm told that I'm an outlier, that people who listen to music do better work when they listen to music. I don't understand that. That's weird to me. Somebody's asked me what books I recommend for reading aloud. Winnie the Pooh. It depends on, honestly, it depends on grades or age level. And the ability of your child. But I recommend finding books that you like, even adult books that don't have more adult type of content, but just good books that are good stories, like Wind in the Willows, Green Acres. I'm trying to, is it Green Acre? No, Green. It's not Green Acres. I can't remember the name of that one. But there's some good classic literature, okay, that you can read to young people that will engage their brains just listening, and they can actually follow along a little bit in the book. And you can read books that are interesting for you. I mean, they might not be the book that you would necessarily say, oh, that's the next book I want to read. But it will engage them enough. And even just the idea that you're reading to your child and your child is listening to you is a good paradigm to go back to repeatedly, right? So I used to read, I'll tell you a trick for older kids. Phoenicia, actually, because you have older kids as well as younger kids. When I was driving the kids, I would have printed out an article that I wanted to read, and I would give it to my child to read to me while I drove. And in that way, my child was exposed to current events, because my articles were all sort of political, socioeconomic stuff. Nothing untoward, but things that should be interesting for me, they're interesting for me, and things that would expose my children to current events in a way that they would maybe ask more questions, which they did. So it was actually very successful. So that's an idea. And it gave them practice reading. I would highly suggest reading the Bible to your children. Careful for the raunchy parts, because there are some pretty nasty parts in the Bible. But there's some really great parts too, that are very engaging stories. And especially Genesis. For younger kids, I would start with Genesis and I would go through those stories. And if you haven't heard, okay, I gotta finish up. If you haven't heard Jordan Peterson's lectures on Genesis, they're quite fascinating. He comes at it not from a strictly Christian worldview. He comes at it from a pragmatic, These are the stories that people have been telling for millennia. Point of view. And when you look at it that way, he breaks them down, and it's really fascinating, and it will help you teach Genesis, I believe, and Exodus to your kids. They are stories worth knowing, even if you don't believe the Bible, because my goodness, they've never been disproven. They've been around for millennia, and they're good to know just as a standard, because they exist in our culture in ways that you don't even recognize unless you've done that kind of a study. All right, so I have to finish up. I want to wish let's see, my next session is going to be January 23rd. Hopefully, I'm moving at the end of the month, so I'm going to try to squeeze in one more session. You'll get an email, a follow-up email, and I'll put it on there. It'll be the same time. I'm making it a Saturday because it seems that that was very successful for a lot of people. So Saturday the 23rd. And I want to encourage you to go to SorboFamilyFilmStudios.com and check it out. And if you can sign up there for those emails, they are separate and distinct from these emails. Okay, lastly, I was going to give you some good learning videos for the kids. So today I'm going to focus on a couple of documentaries. There's a great documentary called Is Genesis History by Ken Ham. And it's funny because I was just talking about the book of Genesis. That is a great documentary that covers a lot of science and a little bit of Genesis to boot. And it's also very engaging, even for younger kids, in my opinion, because the graphics that they put in are very good. The next one that I'll recommend is Patterns of Evidence, The Exodus, which is a film that my husband worked on. He was the narrator for that one. Patterns of Evidence is a whole series of films now. Tim Mahoney's done an amazing job putting out a series of documentaries, very well done, very, very intriguing and interesting, really hold your interest. Maybe not for young kids, but certainly as of age 10, 11, 12. These are the things that 12-year-olds, or roughly around that age, the tweens, really start to wrestle with. The meaning of life. What are they here for? What is it all about? And those are things that we want to engage our children on. Those are the tough questions. So these are good films for you as parents, so that you're prepared for some of the questions that your kids are going to come up with. And then finally, I'll recommend, shameless plug here, for Before the Wrath, which is a documentary that my husband did, also biblically based. And it was the number one Christian film on Amazon for like several months running. So it's available on Amazon Prime. Patterns of Evidence, I think if you just Google search Patterns of Evidence, unless they've shut down his website, it should be there. I shouldn't laugh. It's actually not funny. But Patterns of Evidence. And then, Is Genesis History is Ken Ham's site. And so hopefully you'll enjoy that. Do you have a contact email address for comments and questions? Yes, sam@samsorbo.com is the email that's attached to all of this stuff. So just go to sam@samsorbo.com. Hillsdale College has a great lecture series on children's classical literature. That is true. There's also it's not Barefoot. It is Lovely Feet. Beautiful Feet is the name of the website. Beautiful Feet. I think it's just beautifulfeet.com. They run a list and they sell books of classic literature. So that actually might be a good place to start also. Okay, that's it for me. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. We're going to take next week off because I'm going to be busy moving, but we'll see you back here hopefully in 2 weeks with more questions, and feel free to email me. I am thinking that I'm going to start personal coaching for a fee. I just haven't gotten around to how to make that happen. So if you have any interest, let me know, and I'll put you on maybe a separate mailing list for that also. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.